can't buy. It resides between my eyes. Walked through the fire, came out better on the other side. See, life's like a beach if you find the sand. And right now, I feel like 100 grand.
You are listening to Inspired Insider with your host, Dr. Jeremy Wise.
Dr. Jeremy Wise here, founder of InspiredInsider.com, where I talk with inspirational entrepreneurs and leaders. Today is no different. I have Ronna Chisholm of Dossier Creative and Railyard Lab. And Ronna, before I formally introduce you, I always like to point out other episodes of the podcast people should check out. There's a really good one with Dee Clevitt. Dee Clevitt has an agency and she specializes in helping companies create SOPs. That's what she does. She comes in, helps streamline, it could be onboarding of clients, onboarding of staff. And so we geeked out on our favorite productivity tools and just streamlining things in general. So that was a favorite episode of mine. Also, I had Kevin Hurrigan of Spinutech. Kevin's had an agency since 1995. So Ronna, I don't know, I'm not going to date you or anything, but like Ronna started hers back in 1987, actually. So Kevin, Ronna's beat you in that regard. But it's interesting because Kevin shared just kind of the landscape of the internet, the agency world, business in general over the different decades. And it's pretty fascinating. So I'm sure we'll have pretty interesting conversation here. And just check out many more episodes on InspiredInsider.com. This episode is brought to you by Rise 25. Rise 25, we help businesses give to and connect to their dream relationships and partnerships. And how do we do that? We actually do that by helping you run your podcast. We're an easy button for a company to launch and run a podcast. We do the strategy, the accountability, and the full execution. So Ronna, we call ourselves the magic elves that run in the background to make it look easy for the host so they can create amazing content, create amazing relationships, most importantly, run their business. You know, for me, the number one thing in my life is relationships. I'm always looking at ways to give to my best relationships. And I've found no better way over the past decade to profile the people and companies I most admire and share with the world what they're working on. So if you've thought about podcasting, you definitely should. If you have questions, go to rise25.com or email us at support@rise25.com. I'm excited to introduce today's guest, Ronna Chisholm. And for the last over 30 years, she's served as founder and business director for Dossier, one of Vancouver's top brand design studios. And Dossier has had a hand in many, many iconic brands. You know, Canada's most iconic brands, but overall iconic brands. So we're talking Mike's Hard Lemonade, Coca-Cola, Kraft Foods, Vega, Naked Grape Winery. I can go on and on. Also, she wasn't busy enough. She also founded a unique intern-powered design studio called Railyard Lab. And that is with the goal of strengthening ties between business and design while providing creative services to social impact organizations that are doing really important work in communities. So Ronna, thanks for joining me.
Thank you, Jeremy, and really honored to be here. And kind of took me down memory lane a little bit, talking about decades of the design industry and went back there. Find, oh yeah, we have all that too.
We'll dig into your background and how you got into this. But first, just start with Dossier, and I'm going to share my screen. So if people are listening to the audio, there is a video version, and we're going to poke around the site. But talk about Dossier and what you do.
Yeah, Dossier is a brand and innovation is how we describe our company. And so we have a real specialty in creating brands for food and beverage and health and wellness. And also we rebrand and reposition a lot of professional service companies. So that's just a little on the side, but our love and what inspires us is something called creating the unseen. And so that's taking from like nothing. So we tend to focus on startups that are quite well financed. As you mentioned, Mike's Hard Lemonade is one of the kind of iconic ones that we did in the mid 90s. And so that was, that's an example. And I can get into that later if wanted.
Yeah, talk about Mike's Hard Lemonade.
Yeah,
how'd you meet them in the first place?
We were working with Anthony von Mandel. So he is owned Mission Hill Wines. We had created California Cooler for him and some ciders and some wine projects. So we started working with him in the late 80s, early 90s. And then Anthony wanted to create a brand. He actually charged us with creating a brand new category, which is no small feat. And he had brought some inspirations from some lemonades from Australia. I think it was called Hooch at the time. And so it was, right from the inception, the naming, the concept. Kudos to Anthony. He was he wanted a legacy, and that's what we realized really early. Okay, this is big. This is a big opportunity, and this is creating Anthony's legacy. And so the first set of creatives that went to focus groups, they were great. They were really interesting, but nothing was like really hitting it out of the ballpark. And that's where Anthony just, said, no, well, he was very comfortable with the creative process, and let's go round two again. That was back to the drawing board. And even Mike's Hard Lemonade, we had a whole, lineup of great concepts to go into focus groups. And it was, a lot of people won't know this story, like literally the day before, my partner and co-founder, Dawn, was like, I feel like we need to put something more in. And they came up with this concept, Mike's Hard Lemonade. And it really hit a nerve at that time in the marketplace of this sort of disgruntled kind of Gen X kind of individual. And so the client hadn't even seen it. The marketing folks, and Anthony had not seen it when it went into focus groups. And in the focus groups, people just went crazy over it right from the get-go. So it, huge like success right out of the gates.
Was your job to come up with the name? Like at this point, there's no name and there's just a concept of what it is. And you have to say, what are we naming this thing? Is that right?
Exactly. Yeah, actually, how are we positioning it, the naming, the design. And in the first round, like it wasn't even settled that it was going to be a lemonade. There was like thoughts of from the client, like, hey, we could do an alcoholic cola. So we narrowed in on lemonade the second round, but it was like, yeah, there was no previous research.
Do you remember any of the bad names?
I don't from that one.
I don't know.
But I know like that
Cola Hooch, and you're like,
yeah. One of the really interesting insights, though, that we did have was that at the time, a lot, like this is before the craft brew, whole trend, right? But a lot of young men, did not actually like beer and the taste of beers at that time in the mid 90s.
I'm definitely falling into that category.
They were too embarrassed to hold coolers because
I am not. I'm secure enough, but I do drink like a 21. Your stereotypical 21-year-old female with like, I want fruity sparkles, umbrellas.
Yeah.
And I'm totally secure with that. So, anyways, yeah.
Well, a lot of guys younger probably aren't as secure, Jeremy. And so that's what we had. They were embarrassed to hold in their hand like a fruity. And at the time, there wasn't a lot of coolers around. And so we took that and went, this has to be something that guys are going to like not be embarrassed by and cool. So we went more non-gender at that time, which was really like novel. And and it worked. Yeah.
It's interesting. It reminds me a lot of Liquid Death. You know about Liquid Death?
No, I don't. No.
The sparkling water that basically same thing. It's like, I'll show it right here, where it's a basically a sparkling water, but like it looks like really edgy and I don't know the full story on it, but it's basically a sparkling water with branding that looks like Megadeth. You know what I mean?
Yeah. Well, and Mites at the time was like the obviously it's like many years later, decades later, and the packaging is changed and there's not a story. But that story was a very riveting story of a disgruntled Gen Xer, making this in his basement. And um, there's and something that your listeners might not know is that Anthony Von Mandel, we went on to create White Wave as well. So Mike's and White Wave, like, he has his some gold in that area too. But this was something he was so pleased with because he hadn't seen the concepts, hadn't seen it, and it actually built his empire to become a world-class winery by a lot of other wineries. So we worked with him for about 10 years, and then we moved on to the largest wine company in Canada, Vincor at the time, which is now called Arterra, and was bought by Constellation Brands, which is a big US wine company. And so we worked for them for well over a decade as well.
Ronna, where does your work end and another agency begin? Like, what are the services that you're like, we stick with this, and other maybe agencies will handle different components of this?
Yeah, that's a great question. And also kind of we can get into later in our conversation maybe as to why an agency in another province, was interested in acquiring us. And so we always decided that we would stay small and boutique and just really specialize in the creating of brands. And we never actually went into digital early, and that was an intentional. I think lifestyle was important to us, and we just wanted to have a very boutique, 20, 25 kind of person at the most kind of shop. And so, but we realized a couple of years ago, that we were spilling off like a lot of services. So the client would come in the early stages, and then we would have to refer them. We'd have to bring in a digital firm, and we did a health and wellness men's product for hair loss, actually. And,
I need that. What is it?
It's called Zion. It should be.
I think I saw it.
Well.
I think I saw it on your work page here.
Yeah.
Right here.
Interesting story.
No, where is it?
No, it should be there. Anyways. You know what? I have to apologize.
This will be my wife's favorite episode if you solve this problem.
You could probably go to our social, but
I'll find it. How do you spell it?
I don't know. Yeah, Zion, Zyon. If you go online, we're a proverbial design firm that doesn't have, our website up to date all the time.
It looks pretty good, but you can't, being this many years in business, you can't put everything in there.
Oh, there it is. Sorry. It is there.
Oh, right here.
What do I know? Yeah. So again, naming, and this is all the product form factor we design as well. So this was for a cardiologist that had a patented technology for hair loss. And he had a big pharmaceutical, company on the NASDAQ. And he, with another doctor that was a world-renowned hair transplant guy in Vancouver, that celebrities and like football, like stars, like from all over, I think Bono supposedly even like traveled to Vancouver for their hair transplants. So they were partners. And so this was an example of one of those like well-funded startups, big vision to ignite this category and do something very different than the other kind of competitors in the category. Where was
You're saying about the agency
filling off? Filling off. So for all of this, we, then they needed a whole digital site that had like referrals from doctors. So pretty complicated site. So, it was a couple $1 million that we, probably for digital and then performance marketing, a firm in LA. And then, and so we started, recognizing that, someone might, maybe there's someone that could be interested in how much we spill off. Like,
tons. It's like lots of opportunities, and you from the beginning have this relationship with them, so they trust you And
Exactly.
the next
Yeah.
step is like, okay, like fly
Yeah. Yeah.
away. Like we don't help you with
Yeah.
the rest
Yeah.
of the stuff.
Yeah. Yeah. And as the type of designers that we, have in our company and strategists, like everybody is so passionate and excited and like about inspired to create the next new thing. So they're quite happy to like leave it on. It's not the best business strategy though. Yeah.
So then did that lead to partnerships and acquisition? Because I mean, whoever it is, forgive me, because I definitely have had an
Hmm.
agency on here and we were talking about Mike's Lemonade, but they weren't working on what you were working on. They were working on more of the getting it out there and
Oh
the
yeah. Yeah.
advertising piece, which was
Yeah.
fascinating to hear. So how did that lead to maybe partnerships for you or acquisition?
Yeah, we never really partnered. We'd have, some of our potential people that we would refer. But over time, we found even COVID actually kind of, there was not, we lost some of the networks and like, who do you refer? And then the needs of our clients, we just recognized, yeah, we weren't really meeting those. Um, and then there was an agency that we had known about that did a venture with us or a venture. We had a client that we all kind of took some equity in. So we knew about them. But actually, it wasn't like it was not an intentional kind of like, we're going to go to market at all. We had a joint client. So we had a client called the Little Potato Company there in the US. So we had helped them grow from, I think it was about 30 or 60 million to 300 million,
Wow,
like very, very quickly
that's
after a
crazy.
rebrand. So
We're looking at it here, by
this,
the way. If you're listening to the audio,
yeah,
here's the
a lot of people that buy potatoes would recognize this brand. So this was, I think, 2013 or so when we started working with them, and they didn't realize that they didn't have any equity. Their packaging was very sort of farm, small. And what we did is we went to research, but we also um, with a marketing partner, hired a firm in Seattle that I think it's Seattle, maybe no, San Fran, that are food innovators. And so um, did a lot of food product innovation and came up with the new bags, the form factors, but also oven trays and
hmm,
microwave trays.
hmm.
And again, this was another
Making it
story of
easy
like
for people.
just, yeah, the sales just skyrocketed. And it was just like, 10 years of working with them, and they were a big client. And then like what happens in our industry, if you've been around long enough, is that marketing teams change within a company. And in this particular case, the whole marketing team changed. Someone new came in, didn't know us from Jack, and had their preferred people that they wanted to work with. And so that happened. And so then the ZGM, who's the company that acquired us last summer, started working with Little Potato, and they had all the experience with um, the marketing side of things, campaigns, digital, and they did not have packaging food. And so the time they also were teaming up with and partnering with Frank Palmer. So that might be a name for any Canadians. It's kind of the madman of advertising. He's about 85, 87 or something. And he's written all sorts of books. He's very famous in Canada. And he's actually had sold, his firms were bought by DDB, and then now he's back doing his own thing. And the two firms went joint ventures into something called Ethical Food Group, which I didn't mention to you, Jeremy, but it was to actually help startup foods and that are ethically kind of positioned. And so two agencies, which is really unique, which we were like that entrepreneurial and venture spirit really kind of intrigued us. But it also meant that ZGM they didn't have the food and beverage experience, and were partnering with Frank Palmer, and they were knowing that they didn't have the food. It's a real specialty in the design industry. And so we landed
Is it
where they landed.
ethicalfoodgroup.com? Is this the right one? I don't
That
know.
is it. That is it.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. 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 So back to Little Potato,
Yeah, here it
ZGM,
is, right there.
because all of our marketing peeps, were gone, and they hired ZGM, and they rebranded to this, um, uh, that new look. But the company still recognized that we had the expertise in all the packaging forms and the production of artwork. So we were asked to still stay on, but work with ZGM team. So we got to know them. And we, they found out that, we said, well, let's hear about what you do digital and what you do marketing, because we've got lots of clients that we just still off work and we're referring partners. And it was just the right time. They kind of went like, hey, we'll fly 5 partners down to meet with you next week if you've ever thought about like selling. And we were like, no, we never thought that we would align with anybody on values and that kind of entrepreneurial spirit that we wanted to keep alive. Um, but they were great people. So you'd have to go to the ZGM kind of site to see the partners there. Um, and yeah, lots of shared values. And so long process, but we're now part of the ZGM family. And Dossier staying, what appealed to us was Dossier's in Vancouver, and we are keeping Dossier, keeping our culture, and keeping our, managers. And, their attitude was like, don't muck with Dossier.
I'm curious, and I'm looking over
Mm-hmm.
here to find it. Is it because as you would say, ZGM is
Not Z, yeah.
is stands for Zero Gravity Marketing?
That's correct. Yeah.
Okay. And so is the site zerogravitymarketing.com? Is that the right site, or is it?
It should be
No.
zgm.ca.
Oh, got it. I'll pull it up. But you at one point said, yeah, here it is. You at one point said to your team, accountants and other people, we're never selling.
Yeah. Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
So
That
what was it?
yeah.
Because you said, hey, listen, you agree to the meeting, great. In your head, you're probably thinking, we're never selling. We'll just hear them out, but I'm probably never selling. And what throughout the conversation changed your mind
Mm,
or started to, create that
yeah.
wedge of, okay, I'm
Yeah.
slowly considering it.
Yeah. Um, well, there was a few factors. One, my co-founder, Dawn, and my partner, um, had always said he could never work for anyone. So that was very, very clear. And anytime I would ever bring it up, hey, we could partner. No, like just very independent, very visionary, very, yeah, a real master in what he does. And he just needs independence and freedom like hugely. So he didn't think he could ever work for anyone. Um, it had been a couple years of
Except for
COVID,
you.
and yeah, yeah, exactly.
You're like, you're already working for someone.
I have a story about
Don't
that
you realize
if
that?
we can go there.
Yeah, go
Yeah,
ahead.
totally, because on the business side too. So but it was a couple of years into COVID, and we're working remotely. And so I think we started talking to them in 2020, 2022. We were kind of back in hybrid, and we have, folks on our team that have been with us for 25 years, 20 years, 30 years. And we were thinking about just how, Dossier's got such a portfolio and legacy kind of in Canada for creating brands. Like it would just be a shame to just close it down one day kind of thing. And, you folks have been with us for like 30 years. And so if we were open to like, if there was ever the unicorn, we thought that kind of aligned with our values, and we wouldn't mind working with, for a transition period. then we would consider it. So ZGM's 5 partners were just really nice, really smart, very seasoned. They've been in the business a long time. And so it was just kind of one step after another going, oh, well, there's been no red flags to say no to not go forward with it. So.
But it was something they said, or was there anything throughout the process that you realize? It's one thing is there's no red flags, there's another of this is very interesting. Like there can be a lot of no red flags.
Yeah.
And but maybe not as attractive. So was it
one
something
thing,
about autonomy?
yeah.
Because you mentioned
Yes,
obviously
yes,
what
yeah.
were they? And again,
Yeah.
like so a company could say, oh, you're going to be a separate entity. And then once it happens,
Yeah.
okay, things,
Yeah.
I mean, I've heard it, like,
Yeah. Yeah.
things can change at that point.
Absolutely. Yeah. And that's what we were. The one thing that the GM partners did that was brilliant. And I don't know if they knew how brilliant it was, probably, but when they flew out to meet with us right away, they brought the founder of Paperleaf. So Paperleaf was a digital app company that they'd bought a couple years before. And the founder was on his second year of a 3-year term with them. And Jeff and was a similar, situation where Paperleaf has this specialty. We're not going to change the brand, the name. It'll just be a company, of the GMs. And they brought him as he did at dinner, didn't have any closed conversations. Jeff, we could call Jeff anytime during kind of the year of negotiations. So I got to really hear they'd done this before, and it wasn't they had actually a couple other acquisitions before, but this was a real recent one that was very similar to us. And so hearing Jeff said, nope, they left me alone. They, followed through on everything that they said they were going to do. That really, really helped.
Then they slipped him a 20 after they left. Here's your 20. Thanks. It's like some actor. No, I'm just kidding.
Any advisor that we had spoken to during the process too, when they heard that, they were like, oh, okay, these guys have done it before. And that's a really good sign.
Yeah. They brought the proof with them, I guess you could say, of your biggest objection and obstacle to getting past before you even entertained it.
Yeah. It wasn't their first rodeo. So they had they were able to say, we were able to say, how does this work? What does this all look like? The whole process of going through this. And so that was helpful too.
You mentioned there's a story behind you and your co-founder when I said, well, he actually does work for someone new.
Oh, yeah. Yeah. Okay. So when we started in 1987, he was a young designer that had worked on Expo 86 that came to Vancouver. So he was kind of like, young creative shot out of a cannon working with these amazing people. Went to work for a couple of firms that were really great people, but they were just going bankrupt, every time. So he was left with being in a firm where they fired everybody. He was the last person. His boss came up in the elevator and said, "Hey kid, I'm leaving town because we've gone bankrupt. If you want to handle the clients, go ahead." And he left his car in the basement, his car in the basement. And so we had keys to this studio for about a month before the bankruptcy trustees came in. And the phone rang and clients were wanting work. And so I was in school for a business degree in finance. And so I put some, forecasts together and said we could do this and incorporated. And that's how we kind of started Dossier. It was just landed on us, and we needed to survive and eat, and then I was in a pretty fortunate position to be in a really high profile internship program for 2 years that was grooming me for Wall Street or Bay Street in Canada, and was an intern program. And so I did go into the investment industry. Institutional investment is for a couple of years, but on the side, I was always managing Dossier. And so, however, I was seeing, the work that we were doing through Dossier and that entrepreneurial. I've always been an entrepreneur, kind of from a child, that spirit in me, and I felt like the finance at the time was very soul sucking, and it was very, honestly, Wall Street movie like. That was it. And I'm a 4'11" woman, like, in that industry, and our business is taking off, and we had came to a point where, like, you're either going to hire someone to run the business, or I'll try it out for 6 months. So I tried it out for 6 months. I loved the stimulation, and got an offer back to the field in finance 6 months, and I said, no, I'm going to stay. But what I didn't realize was, I thought, okay, I've got this analytical corporate training. I'm just going to come in here and, like, put all these structures in place, and, like, this can't be rocket science running a design firm. And it was a lot more challenging than I expected, and that was because of the kind of polar opposite, like, thinking styles. So, a lot of people say, like, like, two forces, art and commerce, and they're completely opposing each other. And that was like us in a marriage. So pretty quickly, I, like, tried to seek some help for how do I survive in here and understand this totally different thinking style. And I was very linear, very analytical. Found a professor of creative studies back east that was part of the University of Buffalo's creative. I didn't know there was academic whole creative studies. And we hired him. He was a facilitator with big steel companies and car companies. And he just loved us because we were kind of everything that he was reading about. And so we worked with him for a team kind of thing so that we could make sure that our marriage stayed intact. And we both created a model called Creative Intelligence together. And it was all about, like, learning to embrace differences and the different thinking styles. And for me, my core values, like, two are, like, embracing differences has been from the time I've been a child, and love. And so it was what we needed to survive at that time and become fans of each other's, like, different thinking styles and our whole team's thinking styles. And then design thinking kind of hit the scene, and I'm guessing maybe 2009, 10, 8, somewhere around there. And so that just, like, inspired me so much, because here I've been trying to figure out this messy circular thinking that collides with my linear thinking. And now Roger Martin, professor of U of T in Toronto, is, like, written book, and he's making the circuit, talking to all the business schools all over the place about, you got to look at designers and how they think, and that's what the world needs. And I didn't agree with everything he said, because he was like, everybody can become a designer. And I was like, no, because I'd be a designer now if I could. But I was such a fan of, like, the bringing together the design thinking and business thinking and making magic, and how what made me feel like it was normal was how messy and how much tension it was in there. So that, if you let me continue, that kind of links to Railyard. So, actually, yeah, it was around that period then that we had the recession. So kicked us in the ass, tons of clients just stopped right away. So 2008, 2009, we had a hard time surviving through that period, but we did. And after that, before that, firms like ours would do a lot of pro bono work for not-for-profits, and printers would do pro bono work for not-for-profits. And so I saw a real need. There was all these social organizations starting that needed good strategy and good design, but they couldn't afford it. They were band-aiding kind of solutions. I saw design thinking being taught in all the business schools, and I saw the design schools starting to actually really take off from a more technological kind of point of view in Vancouver, but they knew nothing about design thinking or business. So I saw this sort of win-win-win possibility of modeling after the internship that I had in finance, where we bring a little cohort of design students and business students together, and then we find social impact not-for-profit organizations to work with, and so it's a studio within a studio. And so now we it's been over a decade, and we have over 50 alumni, and they all give back talks, mentoring. They are at like Amazon and Facebook and Reddit and Microsoft and IBM, like really big kind of tech companies, and they are huge fans of Railyard, and it gave them that opportunity when they're just starting their careers to do like really interesting kind of not-for-profit kind of work. We're also, our office has always been located in the downtown east side of Vancouver, which is known as one of the, probably I think in North America, the worst homeless situation, like even worse than San Fran, you know,
I
district.
didn't know that.
Yeah, really bad. And the particular street that we're on, I always said was like, I felt like probably had the most differences on the one side, because one side of the street we're on, and the building we're on is in a design center, and it's filled with high-end architects, high-end furniture, really high-end furniture, every type of and fashion, Herschel and Aritzia, all in this one. And on the other side of the street is all shelters and homeless, hardest to house kind of housing. And um, so we did a lot of work, really did a lot of work rebranding and re-strategizing a lot of the really good social organizations right in the neighborhood, and they got to immerse into those. So
She'll take on kind of a
yeah,
cohort, and each cohort is working on cool projects. Who manages the cohort? Do you actually
yeah,
have? It's tough because on one hand,
yeah,
which I want to get into, with Dossier, you have people who've been there for 30 years, right? Which there's some continuity, it's stability, and then on the other hand, you have these rotating cohorts. They have to retrain everyone every whatever number of months.
Yeah, we are doing one a year because it's a lot of energy, and we had a couple of years where we did twice, and that was a lot. It's a really great question. Since 2000 and I believe 14, I've had a manager. So I did the first couple myself and realized pretty fast that that was not going to be viable. So the managers, we've had a few over the years, and they have sometimes been Railyard interns, so alumni. They've come back. They've always been from the business side of things, and like really phenomenal people, and that I will still be there mentoring and guiding, and I'm still quite involved, but I'm not doing the day to day. And so right now I've got two former alumni that are interviewing all the candidates right now for the next cohort. And then myself and our team act as project advisors. And then our former alumni, the Railyard alumni, act as mentors and project advisors as well. So we've got a lot of support.
From the Railyard Lab part of things, how do you keep it sustainable? Is it are the projects that are coming in maybe at a discount because there's a cohort, or people are paying, I imagine, right?
They're paying, and it is at a discount. And then, as much as we can, we've been, getting government grants And then our goal has been to just, we're never going to bring on interns for free. So we do pay them an intern rate. So our goal has been to at least cover the costs of the interns, like their salaries. But it's been our way of giving back, like that like our management fees, we don't cover.
Yeah. I imagine it comes back in the end. I mean, obviously, just helping serving these social organizations is a give back, but also these people are spreading the gospel and word of you and your companies, which helps. They're going out into the world and coming back and then just paying it forward. So there's a lot of benefits.
Yeah, and the other benefits, there's a reverse mentoring. So we're getting young, 20 somethings, and they'll come in, and our, senior teams will learn from them and vice versa. And so fresh new ideas. And that's sometimes really important to clients too. How do you stay, we had this question just recently in a pitch, like how do you stay current and young and that type of thing. So they teach us and, as well.
Ronna, talk about, I want to go back to the Dossier, and you've had some people for 20 plus years. Okay. What are some of the things that you've done to foster such a great culture and retention that other companies should think about doing? Right? What have you done?
No, what have we done? Yeah, you would really have to ask them. I think the work is, so that's been like bringing them good work to work on, like good challenging work, stimulating work that we get to see out in the world. I think that's very motivating. I mentioned that like love and embracing differences was big values, and so of mine. So quite a long time ago, we established, our strategy at the time and our value set. And like, for example, we had like, how do we create well, like lead well, live well, and create well. So under living well was love and humility and embracing differences. And then we had, things under, creating well, candor and curiosity and that type of thing. But on the living well, it was a big focus. We live in Vancouver. Like it's an amazing place to live with all of the, mountains and ocean right here. And everybody wants to be out in the playground on the weekends. And we have a really good talent, coming in from the UK and Australia, New Zealand, all Commonwealth countries that want to come, and then they'll want to stay here once they're here. So can't tell you how many designers we've hired from those kind of countries that are here on a 2-year permanent, and then they'll apply for permanent residency and stay. So we established this, living well, creating well, leading well. And how we have embodied that is we do have like a visual of it, like that's in our performance reviews, and everybody has to kind of visually map how much they're embodying, love and living well and humility. And then every like week on our studio meeting on Monday mornings, we bake that into our studio meeting, not just jumping in and talking about work, but we have a section that starts off with essentially like pictures of everybody's kayaking and skiing and rock climbing, like what they've done on the weekends, and kind of how they're living well. And so everybody, and that's never tired of seeing, what people are inspired by and are up to on the weekends. And so one person facilitates our studio meetings monthly. They have a theme that they like talk about that's creatively inspiring as well. And they weave in like all the photos that they get from the team's like weekend. And then we have a section for love, and it's all about giving love to the team for the last week. And I thought at first it would be kind of corny, and
well, that's what
how
actually
would this be received.
That's
and
what
I
I'm
was
thinking from,
I was
okay,
amazed.
like
Yeah.
I'm taking your business minded, linear focused. And so I'm thinking as you're
Yeah.
saying this, that sounds probably amazing to the creative people. And you're thinking, when are we getting, I mean, I'm not going to put words in your mouth, but like,
Yeah.
let's talk numbers here so this thing stays viable, and we're showing pictures of the kayak, right? So, but it seems like you're totally, you saw
Yeah,
it
no,
transform.
yeah, that was part of my vision to actually, I didn't know how well they'd receive it though. I thought like, I'm like, okay, we're going to get, we're going to do this. And it has kept on for more than a decade, like, and
People
everybody
love it.
embraced it and people love it. They're very comfortable with saying, I'm giving love to this person, nailed it on all the new biz work last week. And this work, and yeah, the team, so the three people like that we mentioned that have been around for a long, long time. I mean, their words that I hear back is the culture and the care.
That's especially, even important with remote teams. Like if someone has a remote team and you don't even get to see people in person. I mean,
Yeah,
some companies,
yeah,
and sharing, even that's even, I would think, even more important because you don't see people in person or know what's going on, or you're
yeah,
just maybe on Zoom calls occasionally here. So that's really, thanks for sharing that. I think that's really a golden
mm.
gem of this.
Yeah.
Um,
I was just gonna say, it did take my business mind a long time to land on like a performance review package that worked for visual people, because the SMART goals and putting it in a document and coming prepared for a meeting, like no one ever showed up. And so we put it into a whole visual kind of, and those values were just super core to, I mean, that's where we always start. How are you living out these values?
Ron, I have one last question. I don't know.
Hmm.
I know we're right at the time, so I don't know if you have time for it, so we can end it here. If you don't,
Sure. Yep, I'm good.
um, I just would love to hear. You've been doing this a long time, obviously, very successfully. I'd love to hear mentors. It can be colleagues also, and some lessons
Mm,
learned along the way. I know you mentioned a few people, including Roger Martin.
hmm.
You mentioned
Yeah,
Frank Palmer. Who are some of the other colleagues, mentors that
yeah,
have helped you on the
yeah,
journey?
yeah. So Frank Palmer was not, I have not met him in person. He was mentors of ZGM partners for sure. And I would love to meet him. I did have a big mentor early in my finance degree kind of life. And his name was Milton Wong. And he was a money manager. And I worked for him for my first internship. And in that field, he was a real anomaly. His sister was an artist, but his brothers were um, engineers, and they were at the time trying to get into any professional engineering careers in Vancouver, and they couldn't because they were Chinese, and they ended up created the stain with being tailors and created this legacy in Vancouver that had the documentary on them, the modernized tailors story. But Milton saw that. He saw his brothers and the racism, and he was the first Chinese banker hired, like on a national bank in Canada. And so he ended up becoming successful, but also did a lot of philanthropy. He created dragon boat races to bring people of all kind of ethnicities together in Vancouver. He created a dialogue center, science center. And he was a personal mentor of mine. And early when I was working in the finance industry, we had big meetings with global Sachs kind of analysts. And I was totally out of place at like being 20 but he pulled me aside and said, like, there was a woman that had come in that was a really well-known economist. And he said, Ronna, you never have to apologize for being a woman ever in your business, in your career. You don't have to act and look like a man. You can be feminine, like this economist that had just come in, and you can do anything you want, kind of thing. So that really, that was big for me. He also, though, was so big on community values. So he started the internship program that I was involved with because he saw a lot of institutional money coming in from the baby boomer generation. And he was concerned that the new young money managers wouldn't have good values and ethics. So it was all about building good community values, ethics. And a few years ago, he passed away, and on his deathbed, kind of thing. Well, it was a meeting with a lot of my alumni. But he just went around in a circle with them and said, "What are you doing for the community? What are you doing for the community? What are you doing for the community?" So, yeah, he's got a book up on Spark on my shelf.
What is
there.
it called?
It's a book Spark, book of his legacy. And so hugely, and it also helped because I was so young and you're such a sponge. And the program that he started, he said he refused. The dean of the business school here wanted to do it with MBAs. And he said, "No, I won't, because I don't want them at 27. I want them at 20 when they're going to be, I can actually help form them, and they're not going to have the egos they have later." And so that also was hugely inspiring for me about, like, if you can help, influence in a really positive way a young person early in their career, like that, we all know it, that stays with you, right?
100%. Ron, I just want to be the first. Thanks for sharing that. That's powerful. And I want to encourage people to check out dossiercreative.com and check out, obviously, railyardlab.com. And just thank you for sharing the stories, Ronna. And we'll see everyone next time. Thank you.
Thanks for having me.
What I got, you can't buy. It resides between my eyes. Walked through the fire, came out better on the other side. See, life's like a beach if you find the sand. And right now, I'm feeling like $100 grand.